Hello, I'm Liam O'Neill, and this is Eye on China. Thanks for joining us. China's real estate news is not getting better. A cash crunch for China's biggest real estate firms means that construction on millions of housing units has stopped. Most of these units are pre-sold, and the owners are taking to the streets. In over 50 cities, millions of homeowners have abruptly stopped making mortgage payments. They are bringing to a grinding halt a red-hot real estate and construction sector that makes up around 30% of China's GDP. An already faltering economy appears to be on the brink of collapse. In order to fully understand this today, we'll unpack China's real estate market because it has some very unique features. And we'll conclude by analyzing how the nature of the latest protests are very different from those seen previously. This young couple has gotten popular over the last year with their posts about newlywed life in Zhengzhou, a mid-sized city of 12 million, equidistant from Beijing and Shanghai in central China. When she became pregnant last October, they decided it was time to buy a home, despite the financial difficulties caused by the pandemic. Both are college graduates with somewhat decent jobs, and they were able to borrow 1 million yuan for 30 years at 6.27%. Making ends meet has not been easy. As shown in this video, they said that their only form of entertainment was visiting the construction site of their new home. In another video, they share their monthly mortgage payments, about 6,300 yuan. That's more than 2/3 of their combined salary, which is only 9,000 yuan a month. That means there's little left over for food and prenatal care because another 1,500 yuan is going towards rent. Okay, if you were listening carefully just now, you would have heard two of the unique aspects of the Chinese housing market. First, rent. This couple is like 80% of Chinese home buyers. Their only choice in home ownership was a home that was not yet constructed. Basically, China has gotten so rich so fast over the last 2 decades that real estate and construction have been breaking world records in terms of building speed, trying to meet demand. More and more Chinese are living in fancy urban apartments, but a trend set in early. Because competition was so fierce, developers were in the position to demand money up front before construction began. That's now the norm. So this young couple is stuck paying rent somewhere else while also paying a mortgage for an apartment that's not yet built. The second aspect is unaffordability. Big cities everywhere around the world are expensive, but China's cities are at the top. This couple's home is actually not that bad. Their price to income ratio is about 10-1, somewhat comparable to New York City or San Francisco. But Zhengzhou City is mid-size. Shanghai, Beijing, Shenzhen, these cities typically have ratios of 30 or 40-1. The national average is around 17-1. That's astounding. Typically, this means that houses can only be purchased with the help of parents, and that even then, it will take decades to pay off. Back to the couple. In May, they heard rumors that construction on their new home would stop, and in July, it did. Developers said it was due to excessive heat, but workers at the site said that no one had been paid for months. This video they posted records a distorted voice to protect someone's identity at the construction site. He said, "Workers here have not been paid for half a year now. We can barely afford our food. Who would do the work if they're not paid? Even the office staff are not receiving payment." In their July 16th video, the young couple still expresses hope that construction will continue, but others are not so optimistic. Their developer, Sunac China Holdings, defaulted on $105 million in April, and this year's sales are down 75% from last year. So this young couple is expecting a child any day now. 2/3 of their income is going towards a home that is not being built, and they are innocently appealing to the bankers and developers to make something happen. Others in China are not so optimistic. Let's read part of a statement signed by a group of angry homeowners in southwestern China's Jiangxi province. 3 weeks ago, they collectively stopped paying their mortgages on unbuilt homes, and they signed a statement in part that said, all losses caused by the stop payment should be covered by the banks, the government branches that failed to regulate, Evergrande Real Estate Company, and the Longting Property Management Team. If any illegal penalties are imposed on the home buyers, the aforementioned groups must be responsible for the broader or dire consequences this may cause. This statement went viral, and now there are well over 100 similar statements from all across the country. In the last 2 to 3 weeks, millions have stopped paying mortgages to companies like Evergrande Group, Fantasia, Modern Land, and Kaisa Group Holdings. Around 30 large firms have recently defaulted on loans, and perhaps tens of millions of construction sites are without crews. They aren't being paid, so work stops. What stands out in the statement I just read, and so many others like it, is that citizens are, one, not cooperating. They're withholding their money and threatening a very precarious economy. Secondly, they're directly threatening the government. Quote, if anything is imposed on the home buyers, the aforementioned groups, which includes the government, must be responsible for the dire consequences this may cause, the statement read. These words actually show a dramatic shift. China sees thousands of protests a year, but they never outright threaten the Chinese Communist Party. If anything, they are usually appealing to the party for help. Kneeling, sometimes for hours, is a primary act during such protests. Protesters may clash with police, but will hold signs that praise the higher-ups, begging for their attention and in some cases begging for their mercy. But this wave of not paying mortgages might be seen as an act of civil disobedience that directly targets the party. To substantiate this claim, let's look just a little deeper into China's real estate. 70 years ago, when the People's Republic of China was established, all land was taken by the Communist Party. Millions of landowners were left destitute or killed, and all peasants were promised a roof over their heads, a bed, education, health care, etc. Of course, these promises of communism never materialized, and about 40 years ago, the party switched gears, allowed for a form of capitalism to reorient the economy. But the party still held on to the land, and they still technically own it. To buy a home actually means to lease it from the government for 70 years. And the party giving land to property developers over the last 20 years has been a primary means of revenue for local government expenditures, and like I said before, for as much as 30% of the China's GDP. So much is wrapped up into land development, and the party directly controls it. And now, land development is cratering, and the people have had enough. Let's close today by looking at an extreme example of unfinished construction. A 14-minute video was posted 2 weeks ago on Sina Weibo, one of China's most popular social media platforms. It depicts the lives of about 300 people in the western city of Xi'an who moved into a residential complex that they have waited for over 11 years to be finished. There's no water, heat, electricity, there's no paint on the walls. For 11 years, they've waited and waited while renting homes elsewhere. Now, with the COVID-stricken economy, they couldn't hold on any longer, and they all moved in. 67-year-old Li Zhu'e walks up and down 13 flights of stairs several times a day because there's no elevator. She keeps her meals basic. Vegetables are rare. As long as my mom has basic foods, she says she can survive, but she suffered a lot, her daughter says. Children living in the half-finished building resort to playing with gravel and construction debris. But such scenes are difficult for their parents. Mr. Li Ke bought his unit 10 years ago when he and his girlfriend were still dating. Now, their daughter is 6 years old. In their 15th floor apartment, the girl's colorful drawings are the only decorations. The father asks, "What did I do wrong? We just bought a home with our own money." So now you know some background on the current crisis, where millions in China are standing up to developers and their Communist Party backers by refusing to pay mortgages on stalled construction projects. So far, the central government has said little and done even less. This crisis, along with growing frustration over Xi Jinping's zero COVID lockdowns, which we've previously talked about, are pushing Chinese people to new levels of frustration. How long can they hold on? This question is on many people's minds. Thanks again for joining us today. Please leave comments below, like, and subscribe. We'll see you next time.